The 2022 budget is an expensive dud, without any plan to help our residents with the cost of living crisis. The New South Wales Liberals and Nationals are trying to cover up for 12 years of waste and mismanagement, and the people of our state won't fall for it. This budget demonstrates that it is absolutely ridiculous that the Liberals and Nationals parade themselves around as responsible economic managers. We are 12 years in with this state government and we are moving towards $182.2 billion in gross debt. Our AAA credit rating is destroyed and we have interest payments that increase at 24% a year, every year. The Liberals and Nationals don't care that by 2025-26, every single individual in our state will be burdened with over $21,500 each in debt. They will also be stuck with interest payments of over $700 every year per person. There is new spending of $71 billion compared to last year. The government's recklessness means that they will be obliged to borrow an extra $118 billion over the following 4 years, when interest rates are only increasing. This is double the amount of debt Queensland will issue in the 2023 financial year and one third more than Victoria. John Kehoe, economics editor from the Australian Financial Review, stated the following. This is Kehoe from the AFR. New South Wales is the sole state to report a worsening cumulative budget bottom line over 5 years since mid-year budget updates. Yep. Mr. Kehoe went on to state about the Liberals and Nationals budget, and I quote, "It's purely focused on winning a 4th term of government, no matter the cost," and he termed it a desperate spending attempt to win the election. Even Moody's has stated the following about the new spending from the New South Wales government, and I quote Moody's, "It heightens the state's vulnerability to an expected revenue decline." Moody's is saying that the New South Wales budget is credit negative because new recurrent spending programs that will widen the state's operating deficits are beyond our initial expectations. This is Moody's, your mates. This is just further evidence that the Liberals and Nationals are mismanaging our economy. The people of our state should not have to pay for the government's incompetence and irresponsibility. There is no plan from the government to address the cost of living. It's just more new taxes, new tolls, more privatisation, more rorts, and no investment in local jobs from the Liberals and Nationals. Our health system is in crisis, with emergency wait times the worst on record, paramedics stretched beyond belief and health workers terribly overloaded. And the Premier has already started to walk back his promise to hire 7,000 health staff. Our hospitals are in crisis. Our residents should be able to get world-class emergency care. Unfortunately, so many are not getting the treatment within the clinically maximum time recommended by the Australasian College for Emergency Medicine. We see that the southwest and western Sydney suburbs have an even worse time trying to access medical care than other parts of Sydney. And without adequate funding for upgrades, it puts the health and safety of our residents at further risk. Our residents can't rely on the Liberals and Nationals to adequately resource our frontline services. They haven't for 12 years. Their budget doesn't address an education system that is in crisis. There is zero plan to ensure our New South Wales education system is future-proof. We have an overwhelming chronic teacher shortage and education standards have gone backwards. More than 1 in 5 New South Wales students are not meeting the national minimum standard for reading and numeracy, which is simply not good enough. The only thing the Liberals and Nationals have a plan for is to put a forever tax on residents' homes. The Perrottet government should be taking their plan to introduce a broad-based land tax on every family home in our state to the next election. Our taxpayers should have the right to make a judgment call on the Premier's plan for a perpetual land tax. Labor has a positive plan and vision for our state. Labor leader Chris Minns is focused on the future of our state. The Premier is simply focused on the next election, and they know it. We will build 100 new preschools in New South Wales, owned by the public and co-located within primary schools. Our plan to build more preschools exemplifies a more proactive approach in enhancing the availability of preschool positions and takes actual steps towards universal preschool prior to 2030. Labor will additionally build preschools at existing schools that are underused. There is no comprehensive plan to actually ensure that universal preschool for 4-year-olds will be in place or to better student outcomes from the Liberals and Nationals. Parents definitely can't wait until 2030 for them to start acting on delivering accessible and affordable preschool. Parents can't depend on the Liberals when it comes to their promises of schools in general. I met with parents at Gledswood Hills just last week, and they are very distressed that they moved into the area almost a decade ago now on the promise of a new school being built in Gregory Hills. And now children and teachers are stuck in other local schools that are double their capacity with demountables everywhere, with no new school to be seen in the area. The Liberals have completely failed to address overcrowding at schools in Sydney southwest, so we simply can't trust them when it comes to resourcing our education system. We know the Liberals and Nationals have no plan to help boost high-quality local jobs in this state, as they are obsessed with sending jobs overseas to the detriment of our local workers. Over the past 10 years, under the Liberals and Nationals, New South Wales has lost 42,000 manufacturing jobs in comparison to Queensland, who gained 6,000 jobs. Under the Liberals and Nationals, our workers have lost out on 4,000 more jobs because of the offshoring of major transport and infrastructure projects. This has harmed our economy. We can't afford any more offshoring of our transport manufacturing. Their dodgy overseas built trains, trams and ferries are billions over budget. They don't even fit the tracks or tunnels or under bridges. They're riddled with asbestos, cracks and defects, or aren't even safe for our communities. Who can forget, Mr. President, the notorious NIF? That's why Labor will bring back domestic manufacturing by setting minimum local content requirements, increasing tender weighting, creating manufacturing centres of excellence, and establishing the New South Wales Job First Commission to support manufacturers in this state. Better local jobs will be the first of the Premier's priorities for Chris Minns. Chris Minns will lead a Labor team that actually focuses on rebuilding our domestic manufacturing sector, with setting a target of 50% minimum local content for future rolling stock contracts by the end of our first term. Labor will raise tender weightings to 30%, capturing local content, job creation, small business and ethical supply chains. We should not be behind other states with local manufacturing. Labor will tackle the skills gap through TAFE manufacturing centres of excellence, beginning with the Hunter, the Illawarra and Western Sydney. Labor has a plan to back in local workers and manufacturers who can do the work better, unlike the Liberals and Nationals, who are actually proud of sending taxpayers' money and jobs overseas. Sydney is the most tolled city in the world because of the actions of the Liberals and Nationals. They signed the contracts to privatise our roads and created a private toll road monopoly that is continually picking the pockets of Sydney drivers who have been facing never-ending toll increases. Labor will introduce toll relief for drivers and stop the Liberals' toll road privatisation obsession that results in never-ending toll increases. Led by Chris Minns, we will make sure that the Sydney Harbour Tunnel toll concession stays in public hands and give revenue back from both the harbour tunnel and the harbour bridge to our drivers in the form of toll relief. Redirecting the revenue to toll relief is just one reason why tolls will be cheaper under Labor and under the Liberals and Nationals. We know that Premier Perrottet's record is one of flogging off our public assets. So we know he would love to privatise the bridge and tunnel and put it into the hands of private operators. And that will create even more of a nightmare for taxpayers. Under Labor, the public will retain ownership. The Liberals and Nationals' obsession with privatisation must stop. We will put an end to Liberal and National obsession with privatisation and will eradicate the transport asset holding entity, TAHI, ensuring that we retain our trains in public hands. Our trains in public hands. There is no hiding it. TAHI has been a huge financial catastrophe that the Liberals established as a budget con, costing taxpayers $25 billion in bailouts and write-downs. TAHI has never been profitable, and the entity has spent millions of taxpayers' money on PR firms and consultants. Last year, the Auditor-General took the extremely rare measure of refusing to tick off on the accuracy of the state's accounts because TAHI was being accused as a means to artificially shrink the magnitude of the budget deficit. The old trick, get it off book, load it up with debt and get it off the budget.
Then privatise.
And then privatise it. TAHI is a Liberal tool to pursue the government's agenda of privatisation, which we actually heard today, Mr President, in question time in the response. How do we plug the hole? We start developing and selling off all the land. A very, very frank response in question time. It was recently revealed that TAHI was stealthily assigned to flog off over $40 billion worth of public land near train stations, becoming a mega property developer. My colleague, the Honourable Daniel Mookie, has rightly pointed out that the public have had enough of the spin and the accounting con job. Under a Labor government, the safety of our rail network will be put first and honesty in our state's finances will return. Under the Liberals, more than 400, can you believe this, more than 431,000 public sector employees won't get a pay rise that keeps up with inflation. But the government have gifted their mate, John Barilaro, a plush $500,000 a year job in New York. This was after they told Jenny West she had the Trade Commissioner position. Then they rescinded before her appointment was made public. Disgraceful. Labor will end the rorts and we will not allow the scandalous waste of public money. Under Labor, essential workers will get a better deal. We will scrap laws that suppress wages and instead we will replace it with a system that is established on productivity-based bargaining. The Liberal and Nationals budget will not fix the mess of the last 12 years. Tolls, Mr President, fees, fines and taxes are at record levels under this government and everyone knows it, including the Leader of the government. There's no strategy for discipline and responsibility in the management of our state's economy. New South Wales is the highest taxing state and the lowest ranked state economy in the country. Labor, led by Chris Minns, has a positive and credible plan for a better, fairer future for the people of New South Wales. To change the future of New South Wales, it's very simple. We need a Labor government.